This is a clip from the Red Cow Arcade podcast.
There was a new South Park that I saw.
Oh yeah, how was that?
You know,
I haven't been enjoying like South Park in general. Like it's still amusing, but it's just like
it lost something. And that's really hard for me to admit because I've loved them for a really long time. There's something kind of samey about them. There's something kind of like it feels sort of like auto-generated. It doesn't feel like they're. I mean, and it's definitely funny. There was funny shit in this. The joke was that South Park was running out of water, and so and the two fucking pop farm. You know, the thing with the pop farm is like so played out. But
yeah, I only saw like a couple episodes this past season, and it was all about the pop farms, and I was like.
Yeah, it's like as soon as I see the pop farm, I'm like, not this again. It like takes me out of it. It makes me feel like it's not its own episode. It makes it feel like the whole show is about the pop farm. I don't know. But the joke was that the two pop farms are wasting a ton of water and they can sell off their excess water use and make money because there's a drought. And so the boys say, like, we can make these little boats that will measure the distance of your stream. It'll show that your stream goes all the way to Denver. And so they were paying the boys the government was paying the boys to make little boats to measure the stream, and they called it a streaming service. And they said, like, people kept hiring them to measure their stream, and they said, we're making too much. We're making too many things for too many streaming services, which is pretty funny. We're too busy. We're making too, because I guess South Park is the whole library is on HBO Max, but then they do this stuff for Paramount Plus. And
right.
They're like, well, how do you choose which streaming service you do? And they're like, just whoever pays us. We do their streaming service.
Yeah, it is true. Well, the whole thing where it's like things are so spread thin. And I was saying, my other theory, not only is there creative talent spread out over all these TV shows and all these streaming services, is that, YouTube, man, if you're a talented person who's producing content, you can be your own star and you can make your own stuff on YouTube. So I feel like a lot of creatives are just making their own stuff for YouTube or being their own.
Yeah, we're old enough to like. I think it's been the case for a while now that kids grow up saying, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to have a YouTube channel. I want to make content for YouTube. And they don't necessarily say, I want to be a filmmaker. It's not the same concept.
Yeah.
And to me, it's still, to this day, I'm like, no, the pursuit is filmmaking. And then like with that skill, you can create content for YouTube. I still think of it that way, like an old man.
Yeah, no, you do, and that's fine. But I feel like most people would go to YouTube, and then maybe a couple talentless millennials will go to Disney Plus.
I'm convinced that really inexperienced writers certainly are working on these projects. I'm because they'll hire anybody. I think because they're just making so much content.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it does. They all have, from Star Wars to Marvel they all have like a similar voice, that kind of like generic. Anybody could have written this voice.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about Obi-Wan then.
Okay, let's do it.
Because there's definitely a lot of that in Obi-Wan.
So we've covered episodes 1 through 4. Now we're covering the last 2 episodes, 5 and 6.
5 and 6.
So those are the ones when. So Wade's dead. We know.
Yeah, R.I.P. Wade.
Wade was dead to begin with. That's the beginning of A Christmas Carol.
Dead as a doornail.
And so Reva in 5, the revelation. Spoilers, everybody, for Obi-Wan Kenobi. The revelation is that Reva was a youngling that Anakin sliced up, but she survived. She became an Inquisitor. She hates Jedi for kind of a strained reason. Like, they failed me. Like, well, they were getting killed. I mean, how stupid could you be?
Yeah.
But also I am appropriately mad at Vader and want to kill him too. So I'm really just trying to get close to him. I heard a writer, Kevin Smith's podcast, Fat Man Beyond, his co-host, Mark Bernardin, was talking about a screenwriting principle called like, are you telling the story with your cards up or your cards down? And he was saying it probably would have been better to write Reva with cards up. In other words, the audience, you wouldn't want the characters to know, but the audience should know that she was a youngling. And then the twist could be she's trying to kill Vader.
Yeah, I do think that character could have been written and performed way better. Like it should have been more. Should have been more like a Scar like character, you know, a little bit more darker and sassier and like.
I'm just not clear on why she's actually evil, or if she's pretending to be evil, or like. I think she actually did become evil. I believe the information.
She's cutting off like random strangers' hands. She must be somewhat evil.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's a little.
It's not very consistent.
It's strained. It's like you were part of a genocide, and your answer, like you became a Nazi, but you still want to kill Hitler.
Yeah,
I'm confused. Which one are you? It would make a bit more sense if she was like, I'm going to dress up as the Gestapo, but really I'm an inside man, you know, like kind of like the Tala character. That would
exactly. It's almost like they could have been combined, maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work. Yeah, then she gets it was actually a double betrayal, because then she gets stabbed because the Grand Inquisitor wasn't really dead. He got stabbed through the chest, but he lived because he had a lot of hate in his heart, and so Vader stabbed Reva in the chest, but she lived because she has a lot of hate in her. Well, that's the thing. Like Vader wouldn't just like walk away, and the Inquisitor's like, I have had a lot of hate in my heart, so I survived, so we're gonna stab you in the chest and you'll survive, right? And they walk away.
That the explanation? The explanation I remember was vengeance will make you do a lot to survive. Some stupid sentence.
Yeah, it's like Sith hate will keep you alive or something. It's just like
but it has to be a non-fatal wound for the hate to kick in. Because I assume that if you stab her right through the fucking heart or head,
it's the same like Qui-Gon stab that killed him. It's the same one. It's like the same like stab through the torso that killed him. I guess, but
I can hear people say like it's just a movie or whatever. But I'm like, but you don't have to write it that way. You could write it in a way that makes sense. That's actually how we discern between good writing and bad writing, typically, is we analyze the writing.
Yeah, it's just like, at least with the Inquisitor, it's like he's an alien, so like I can understand maybe he has different
he's got fish
anatomy, you know? Like Darth Maul got chopped in half and then he got spider legs. But yeah, Reva's a human, so she should just and I don't really want to nitpick like things like this, but it does baffle me. Like every decision baffles me that's like that.
Only because it's not necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
But really, I remember when we first started talking about this, we were like, well, this is a 20-year period. There is room for growth. He doesn't know that Anakin is Vader, and we, there is some unexplained stuff about Leia, and we've never seen Alderaan, and there's this Qui-Gon Force Ghost stuff, and so there's like all this rich tapestry to do a story about, and I really do feel like it was kind of squandered. My biggest complaint, I was thinking about, I was like, what am I really upset about with this? I mean, I'm upset about a lot of things. And just for the record, none of it bothers me as much as Moon Knight did.
No.
Moon Knight was just a fucking chore. This was at least like I was on the edge of my seat to see like what decisions they would make next.
Yeah.
I was thrilled to watch the show so I could like be like, because when you hear it pitched, you're like, oh, here's like all the things you could do that would make it shitty, but they won't do that, right? And then they do all of them.
Yeah, it does feel like it feels like an episode of The Simpsons where it's like by the end of the series you're back where you started, where it's the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, so it's like it's very much the problem that Solo had, and I'll explain that in a second. But basically, in order to have this series the way that they constructed it anyway, the way they conceived it, which was as it kind of like a 3-act movie, basically, you have to contrive a starting point for him that he didn't necessarily need to have, which was
he has to regress back to some. Yeah.
So you have to get him at some low point, Which I don't think was like a foregone conclusion that Obi-Wan, like during the 20 years, he would have like this very depressive, you know.
Yeah. And I could understand it as the table setting. Like, I even said it was kind of interesting. He's like a Vietnam vet who's got flashbacks and stuff, but they didn't even do anything really with that because he's just like kind of depressed and sad. And then at the end, he like just powers up like instantly when he like thinks about Leia. It's just, that's it.
Yeah, he thinks about the kids and he's like, I gotta save the kids. But it's like, but you were thinking about the kids already.
Yeah.
You didn't have like a newfound interest in the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You were all over Luke. You were making him toys and stuff in the first episode. I mean, like,
and you can infer, you know, that he cares for both the twins and yeah.
So yeah, they had to like over lower him and then they had to overpower him in order to give him a journey that just, I don't know, was already kind of perfectly bookended by the actual movies. And so Solo is like that too, where you're like, well, what's the story of Han Solo? It's like, well, it's the story of a scoundrel who becomes a hero.
Yeah.
Like,
in the original Star Wars.
Yeah. And we're like, well, what happened before that? Like, nothing.
Like, yeah,
nothing happened.
He was a silly man who's became a silly scoundrel, but he's still already kind of a scoundrel.
And we always talk about this difference between plot and story, and like in Solo, I think it was like, well, we'll just give you a lot of plot. Like, we'll show you.
He gets every single like item that Han Solo needs to get.
Right. And this had a little bit of that with like the holster but I was just like, there's things to like about the series. I actually wrote down a bunch of things. I said, okay, here's things I liked about this series. I like that we got to see Alderaan and spend a little time on Alderaan. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Jimmy Smits and Leia interacting.
Yeah, it doesn't. Again, there's no story there. It's just showing me Alderaan.
It's just it was a lot of the like smaller, quieter moments where like Obi-Wan's talking to Leia about like memories of, you know, her mother and stuff like that. Those little things kind of worked for me.
Yeah, me too. I like that Darth Vader's in it. It could have been like the wait for it show, like with Qui-Gon. In fact, I probably could have done a swap there, but I like kind of trying to bridge the gap between like, hey, how come Luke's got all the attention? Why is that boy our only hope? It obviously they didn't decide that they were brother and sister until the third movie, so this helps that a little bit. I liked a lot of the, you know, at least the Vader and Anakin interplay, and for me, if there was one thing that worked almost perfectly, with the exception of shaky cam, it was
shaky cam all over this thing.
The shaky cam is yeah, we'll talk. Was this scene that you could, I actually remember when they said Hayden Christensen's going to come back. I was like, well, we know that that's not really possible. So we're going to see flashbacks, and they're going to have that scene that they had in Rebels where he cuts off half of his face.
It's stolen directly from Rebels. But
I actually thought the scene was conducted really nicely, in as much as I always had to strain to think of Hayden as like in that suit. I was like, hey, that guy's not in that suit. And like when James Earl Jones talks, that's not Hayden talking, you know, just through a voice filter or something. But actually marrying the two and doing the voice switching thing and having him look kind of psychotic behind that mask and all that sort of stuff. Actually, you know, and saying like, you know, I'm not your failure. I killed Anakin. I thought, and that explains like, actually does help a little bit when Obi-Wan decides to say like, he killed your father.
A little bit.
Yeah, it does. It just a little. The certain point of view thing is a little less dumb as a result of that.
But the whole like fight in general was kind of silly. And just like, man, in this the last few episodes, like they stab Reva and then they walk away. They like Darth Vader like puts all those rocks on Obi-Wan, then walks away. Then
it's downright comical. Like we can't actually make any impact in this show, so the characters are gonna like repeatedly be above killing each other. Like I'm just gonna leave you there. It was already ridiculous in Revenge of the Sith, where he cut him up to fucking shreds and was like, the respectable thing to do is leave you there. And actually, we never really got to see Obi-Wan like grapple with like, why did I leave him there? I basically accidentally caused the genocide of the entire galaxy.
And then he did it again.
Yeah, and then he doesn't learn his lesson. He's like,
this is after Anakin Vader's like, I killed Anakin. I am not Anakin anymore. Please kill me. I'm just evil.
yeah. There's no reason to leave me here. And he says that my friend is truly dead, like Luke says, my father's truly dead. Oh, that was really, really dumb. But the truth is like if you establish the fact that they're both super powerful, or at the very least that Vader is super powerful, and I even think they overpowered Vader in this, by the way. I think having him cut through a bunch of rebel guards in Rogue One makes perfect sense. Having him stop a ship, like Yoda level powers, like this is like, I wouldn't, and is there anything more cliche than like Obi-Wan becomes like God tier with all the rocks? I never really thought of him as God tier, you know?
Yeah, he seemed like he was just like a mid-level Jedi, and maybe he could fight Anakin because he trained him. He knows his tricks, you know? It's like, that's my thought would be. He's not like a God tier, lift every rock and throw them at Vader.
That's always what was compelling about Obi-Wan.
Goku level Jedi.
Obi-Wan was kind of like an ordinary guy that got caught in the middle of this whole thing. Like, he was just a good man who was asked to train this boy like any mentor and apprentice, and he ended up in the middle of this, you know, and he was honorable to the end, you know, but he was never the Grand Master Jedi of the whole galaxy. At least I never thought of him that way.
Yeah, and that's why like Luke was the only one who could probably face Vader because he had the most potential, but you know.
Yeah.
And that's why Obi-Wan's like, you gotta kill that guy, you gotta kill him, you gotta kill him. That's why it's weird in this one he's just like, well, you're truly dead, and then he walks away. It's like, all right.
I of course liked an older Joel Edgerton playing Owen, and
oh yeah,
they got the same Baru from prequels. And
yeah.
It was very nice to see them. I could do with a lot more of them, honestly. If I could pitch a version of this show, it would be like this, you know, kung fu. You know, Liam Neeson would be one of the main characters. It would be him and Obi-Wan, you know, gaining wisdom, and probably, you know, in the interest of having it not be a totally dead show, I probably would cut to Vader doing things, you know, like some story about the Empire and what the Empire's up to. But maybe I probably wouldn't have them intersect necessarily.
Yeah, I think it makes things a little too muddy. And I think that's what this show feels a lot like, just spinning wheels while making things muddy.
Yeah, like here's a bunch of distracting new details. Like, so Leia does in fact know Obi-Wan. There's no question about that. And like, if you ever have to send me a message, like act like you don't know me. I'm like,
yeah, just say, General Kenobi, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Yeah, like, why are you saying it like that? Why?
Or like the Emperor's like, why don't you just forget about Obi-Wan Kenobi? Like, why? When the Emperor showed up, so I think it's great. I'm very pleased that Ian McDiarmid continues to play this character like without fail, and I really like that he shows up for work and he gets in that makeup and he does it. He's not done with it yet.
I actually wonder if he was in makeup, because I have a feeling that it was sort of like deep faked. You know how Kyle Dunnigan has those like impersonations where he has the cheap like filter on his face. It was a little like that, because like his face, his like eyes were flat, and I don't know. I when I first saw him, because and actually when they did the close-ups, he looked better to me than he did in like Rise of Skywalker. No, I thought so too. So I felt like they took a sample of him from Return of the Jedi, and put it on his face. That's what I thought.
Maybe even Empire. Empire from the special edition or whatever. No, because that wasn't that angle. Yeah, so probably Return of the Jedi.
I would say Return. It looked because I always thought that Palpatine didn't look right in the prequels, and even in the Yeah, he's like bloated frog. And this one, it looked more right. Like the color around the eyes.
He's definitely CG in some way.
Yeah.
But when I first saw him, I thought I didn't know quite because it was a wider shot. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. I thought that remember that video of James as the bullshit man, but they animated it because they couldn't get him to shoot. So they did like a drawing of the bullshit man, and they did like 2-frame animations of him flapping his lips. In the wide, Palpatine kind of looks like the bullshit man, just doing like a 2-frame animation of his mouth.
You know what's bullshit? You caring about Obi-Wan.
I liked I liked that Anakin's whiny voice was behind that mask, that Vader mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hate me, master. You kind of got some of that back. Somebody I saw the show only came out yesterday, but somebody already has cut together like a montage, like a YouTube, memorandum of Darth Vader, and now they can use clips from all the movies and now Rogue One and now the Kenobi show, and most of it works pretty well, but it is very jarring when it cuts to a shaky cam clip.
Yeah, so the shaky cam looks to be largely digital.
Yeah,
And like I'm talking like in After Effects, you can put an expression on a clip and it's like wiggle, and you put like the parameters. It feels exactly like that. Like the way it artificially moves, it feels like that algorithm, which makes me feel like it was made like by an amateur.
They thought it was a really good idea. Yeah. There's for a show that is probably made by the best.
No wipes, no circle wipes, no wipes.
Yeah,
and shaky cam, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah,
and just the way it's shot too is really, really weird. It feels.
And they also cut between in that montage. They cut between Hayden as Anakin at age 45 or whatever.
Master. It's got like, sort of like a smoker voice.
You see, his voice is marred by alcohol.
Yeah, it's marred by it.
He's been drinking whiskey for too long.
Master. I mean,
but it's very because they try to cut it in, juxtaposed with episode 2 clips, and he looks very young and very fresh faced in episode 2. When they cut to this 45-year-old version of him with the lightsaber, I'm like, oh my god! But actually, I actually thought like, well, Jesus, now I kind of want a 45-year-old Anakin because
I think he comes off better. Like his posture's better. His like expressions are better. Yeah, his tone is better. His smoker voice is better. Like he feels like what a dad in a war would be. you know, like the other guy is like some weird whiny teenager who's like too. It didn't really work. Well, that was always the jarring thing about like whenever I see clips of like Clone Wars. The Anakin in Clone Wars is a different fucking character.
Yeah, it's a different character. A better one.
A better one, yes, exactly.
They did that better in that regard. Yeah, I think before I saw the prequels, I always imagined Anakin with, I don't know, kind of just a different presence than the one we got. And but now that he's played, I don't know, like if there's one thing that this show helped me with, it was a little more acceptance of Hayden, I guess.
Yeah, bridging that a little bit more.
I was trying to think. I was like, "What's the point of this show?" Ultimately, what was the point of the show? Because we know how much
just set up the Reva spinoff, obviously.
Yeah, we know how much it detracted. I guess my most generous is you get to find out when Obi-Wan found out that Vader is Vader.
But doesn't he learn that in Revenge of the Sith?
He knows that Anakin's name is Darth Vader in that. And that he's walking around calling himself Darth Vader. And
so he thought this other Darth Vader was that was conquering the universe.
Did he get the galactic news on Tatooine?
Yeah, that would be the thing. Is if he got the galactic news, he would already kind of know that. Maybe I guess the revelation would be he's still alive. Yeah.
Right. But if he knew of
didn't have the galactic news.
If he knew of the existence of a Darth Vader, then he knows that's Anakin.
Yeah.
And so I guess what we're meant to believe is that he does not know that Darth Vader exists. And yet he lives in abject fear of being found out by this empire. I'm like, you would know that Vader's the threat, wouldn't you, at that rate?
You would think you'd think you'd hear something. I don't know.
Yeah, a Jawa might mention it.
Yeah, the little weird Jawa lives in his cave.
Some people were saying they were like they should have digitally de-aged him. You know what, man? You don't have to fucking touch up everything with CG. Sometimes you can have a big 45-year-old dressed up like a little boy, and
Have a little braid and a smoker
braid.
voice.
wouldn't have been a terrible idea to maybe do Revenge of the Sith era. It might have helped this problem.
Yeah, it might have helped a little bit. And then, yeah, Liam Neeson definitely. He's got his cancer voice. Took you long enough,
Obi-Wan. He didn't look great, but he also didn't look terrible, I thought. And I felt the same way about Hayden. I'm like, these prequel actors are, it's not the same situation as Mark Hamill. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if, like in Mark Hamill's case, he gained a bunch of weight, right? And so like they had to get physical trainers for him and Carrie Fisher and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, wouldn't it be funny if Hayden had his athlete's body when he was little? He became real fat, and they couldn't do it 'cause he was like wicked fat. And I was like, or would they have put his fat ass in a big mocap suit, and they would have mocapped him? That's when you know
just
you're
like
making a phase, when they're
what
like,
is
we're gonna
it?
have to mocap you.
Todd from El Camino or whatever. just live with it.
But see, they have the Breaking Bad team has the right idea. They're like, these are actors and these are characters, and you're just gonna have to deal with Fat Damon.
Yeah, you're gonna have to deal with Fat Damon. You're gonna have to deal with like on Death's Door Mike. You just
I'm not gonna
just deal.
de-age everybody, okay? Although there's always these YouTubers that do an expert job. I was recommended one. It was Mike meeting Gus for the first time from Better Call Saul, and they de-aged them. And it may have been the best de-aging I've ever seen. It is. They both look like it's 15 years ago. It's pretty awesome, and
That's awesome.
probably expensive to do. But it's, for some reason, the big studios always opt to do like the keyframe, less effective version of deep faking,
Yeah.
versus the algorithmic way.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a legal thing about that with image use.
But then
I
they
don't know.
hire Shamook or whatever his name
Yeah.
is to do Luke.
He looked that looked great. And you know what? Mandalorian is great. It's objectively great.
Yeah.
It still holds up. Like we nitpick this Obi-Wan show and say it's spinning its wheels, it's all doing all this stuff, but Mando doesn't do any of this. It's just doing its own thing.
Mando is the most inconvenient fact for people who want to build a case that Star Wars fans hate Star Wars.
Yeah. And like it's like, well, Star Wars was always bad. It's like, no.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Well, they act like it's impossible that this many movies could be bad. It's like, no, it's possible. It is possible that the prequels can be real rough. And I mean, yes, I get it. In the light of day, where filmmaking has gone, what has happened to all of these franchises, they're in a better light for sure. But I don't know, man. Like, I was rewatching like the scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin confront each other with fucking, he's force choking Padme and all that.
So when I first started watching Obi-Wan, I was kind of optimistic about the series, especially the first episode. I put on Revenge of the Sith. I had to turn it off. It was awful. It's so bad. It's so awkward. And like, because like, especially in the beginning where those basketball droids get on their ships and they're like farting and slipping and they're like, oops, brr, and you're just like, why is this so noisy? Why is this so goofy?
The goofy moment I'm thinking of is Anakin starts force choking Padme with that weird face, and then she drops. But they, I don't know, I guess they wanted her to do her own stunt, so it's the gentlest drop you've ever seen. Natalie Portman is like, and then it's a shot of her napping on the ground, and for some reason somebody chose to do a gentle zoom. And it feels like kids are making this thing.
But at the same time, like
it's got vision.
It's got vision, and what I will say is there's a lot of bland stuff in Obi-Wan. Like the design of the Rebels ship is just like so bland. It looks so generic. And then like a smaller version of that ship comes out that's like Obi-Wan's in that one. It's like there's some things that just like seem so bland. But like when you see any of the designs that like George Lucas at least oversaw with like Slave One, like it's so iconic looking, and even all the weird goofy stuff in the prequels is so iconic, like the droid Decars or whatever those are called.
Oh yeah.
Droid Decars.
They can't match droid Decars.
Naboo fighter. They're all very iconic. Like I can picture them. They have great silhouettes, and I feel like there's a lot of just generic choices in these. At least this show.
Lucas is a visionary, and I would say the prequels, at the end of the day, are successes. They're like for however bad they are, they reached
borderline unwatchable, but
they reached audiences. And I'll say this too, for those who resent it when geriatric millennials like us dislike the new Star Wars. George Lucas doesn't much fucking like them either. I saw one of these TikToks the other day where he was like, I've kind of lost control of Star Wars. And I was like, kind of, you fucking sold it. He said, I kind of lost control of Star Wars. And so it's going in a very different direction, but the first 6 are very much mine. So he is maintaining this thing of like the first 6, George Lucas's Star Wars. And after that, not mine at all. So he doesn't like him. He apparently he didn't show up to the set of Obi-Wan. He didn't reach out to Hayden Christensen. He's uninterested. I guess he's been around on the Mandalorian set.
He's playing favorites.
Yeah. Anyway, was there? I always have so many notes. They sure love their Rebels, don't they? Like there's all these
Rebels. Yeah.
There's all these teases to like Ice Cube. You're gonna get a show, and you'll probably end up in Andor. And that Raja guy, like that comedian character from the Eternals, like didn't it feel like every time he did anything, it was out of rhythm and out of place?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, yeah, the whole Rebels thing where it's like there's always a bunch of ragtag rebels in a room, and they're always like, I don't know, complaining about how their ship is broken and they're escaping. Like it's like in Last Jedi, slowly escaping from another ship.
There's something about like
there's a room full of rebels.
Yeah, they want it to be The Handmaid's Tale or something. I don't know. There's something about it.
And it's always bland. It's always generic. Like none of the dialogue's always awful with these kind of like rooms full of rebels.
Yeah, it's always like these like weird extras. Now, granted, I'll grant the people who hate us this. There is that scene in Empire where Leia is giving a rallying speech to the Hoth pilots.
Oh yeah.
And this one dude, it rack focuses to him. One of the greatest movies of all time. It rack focuses to him, and he goes, 2 fighters against a Star Destroyer. sounds like Butthead. 2
Porky's butthole.
Star Destroyer.
Dang old Porky's butthole.
Dang old Porky's butthole, man. We gotta see Beavis and Butthead do the universe. I hear it's very, very funny.
Yeah, and, Mike Judge is he's a visionary. He always just comes off as so like he's like a normal guy who accidentally made a bunch of comedy legendary things. It's
so weird. I was watching him like explain each voice that he does on Beavis and Butthead. He was talking about Mr. Anderson, who's the Hank Hill voice.
Yeah.
And he's like I grew up. Whenever Mike Judge talks, he sounds like a very high IQ butthead. Like. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and but every middle-aged authority figure had like a Texan accent. And I was doing a paper route with my cousin, and this guy said, "You're not my paper boy," and we said, "Well, your paper boy quit, so it's us." And he said, well, I don't know what my paperboy looks like, and you're not my paperboy. I don't know, him characterizing this like indignant Texan was so funny to me.
And it's like what was it? When you find that voice. What was it? What's his name? Shit. Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. Yeah, when he comes up with that impression where you find that voice.
Yeah.
And make a career out of it.
When you have a heist in the Titan. I mean, I keep hearing there's a season 2 of this thing coming. And I'm like, you already did not earn your place.
No. If it's going to be more of this.
I mean, I get it. Ewan is great, and he's a hell of an asset, and he's still age appropriate. But goddamn, move on from this fucking Skywalker, or better yet, don't make any more Star Wars. Is that a possibility?
No, it's not.
But I say that, but like I said, I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to watch the next thing. Not to hate on it, though that can be fun. But more, I'm just like thrilled to find out what decision will be made, because every one of their decisions is kind of like under duress. Every one of them is like, well, if all things were equal, we wouldn't do this, but they're not. So we have to make this. So I'm always interested in like, so how are you going to do it?
And it's really like this whole Obi-Wan thing is really interesting because Deborah Chow directed some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. So there must have been some other creative force. Kathleen Kennedy must have been behind it all.
Last Jedi all over again. And Lightyear has flopped. Yeah, I think that's a good prerequisite for anything. It's like, do you want to be making this? Like, if all things were equal, would you make this show or movie? And I did not get that impression with Obi-Wan. With Obi-Wan, it was like there was a directive, and they had to make it work. And they knew it wasn't gonna entirely, and they said, that's okay.
And I didn't really like look into this further, but I was seeing that the writer was like kind of confused about like who knew who Anakin was Vader, who knew what that, and like it didn't seem like he was really familiar with Star Wars.
All you got to do is watch a few movies, actually. Not that hard.
It's like, okay, so you just got like journeyman people writing it, and yeah. It's just...
I've mentioned him on this pod before. Do you ever watch Star Wars Theory?
No.
YouTuber, big Star Wars fan. He made a Vader and Emperor like fan film that was kind of a little janky, but somewhat well done. But I like his insights. He was caught up in a controversy last year where he did a live watch party and he cried when Luke Skywalker came out for the first time, and it was a somewhat touching moment. Like he was very emotional from the whole thing. And for some reason, like a Lucasfilm employee started tweeting about like how like making fun of the guy. It was really, really, really weird.
Weird.
And so like the fans were like, "What the fuck?" But anyway, he the main premise of his show is, or at least how it started was he was like he would ask a question like how come Luke never asks this question or whatever. He would come up with basically a plot hole, and then he would theorize like, well, here's like a story reason why that plot hole exists. And that's the fun of it. And so for him, it's like, instead of hating on these things that make no sense, he uses it as an opportunity to world build. And he certainly complains. Like he's unhappy with a lot of the Disney stuff. He hates Last Jedi. He loves the prequels. He is crazy about the prequels. He thinks they are the fucking best.
I can't be there with him. Like I mean, like we said millions of times, they're story rich, but the execution is just
it's really
so baffling.
It's an execution thing, but I think that's a fun activity. Is just to be like, all right, like take something that you wouldn't do that with your average movie. You saw some shitty movie, you wouldn't be like, now let me sit around and think about why actually it's the plot holes all make sense. But it's something you can do with stories that take place in a larger world with that span expanses of time that you didn't necessarily see. It probably even drives them crazy because the more they try to fill in those blanks, the more like the more definitive information we have, and the less he can kind of play with. But people have asked me, or I should say, one guy one time in our Discord asked me, like, what would you do if you had the reins at Lucasfilm? And I said I would create a 2D animation division. They would do like DC animation, like those straight to Blu-ray movies. Like it would be that level of quality of animation. So it would really, the idea would be to distinguish it from Clone Wars and Bad Batch. It's not, let those continue to be these kind of serialized Filoni type things. This would be like classy animated Star Wars. And I would do as movies, not as shows, movies, direct to streaming, Star Wars Legends stories. So I would start with Shadows of the Empire.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
90-minute 2D animated Shadows of the Empire.
Like in the style of like those DC Mortal Kombat movies and things like that.
Exactly. And it's not perfect animation style, but it would suit this sort of thing very well. And where it's a little bit of that like American anime kind of, but it's not straight up anime. And then there's your Luke Skywalker, there's your Han Solo, there's your Princess Leia. They're all there, like different voice actors. It's okay. Nobody cares then. You don't have to de-age anybody. You don't have, just make your cool movie and then do it for Heir to the Empire and do it for Jedi Academy and do it for, do it for Han and Leia's triplets there and the death of Chewbacca and do all this cool shit. And because they've already done a pretty good job branding Star Wars Legends, call each one of them Star Wars Legends, Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars Legends, Heir to the Empire,
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's amazing. If somebody like put a gun to my head and said you had to create a series, I would,
do it.
I would,
Shoot me.
please shoot me. Fuck this. No, I'd do something like really off the wall. Like I'd probably just make Friday Night Lights the TV show, but on like maybe instead of centered around football, it'd be like pod racing, and maybe like. There would be like a up and coming pod racer, and and then he has a rival, and maybe the rival like they have like a history, like they grew up together in like some slum or something, but there's also a girl, so there's like a love triangle, just like Friday Night Lights. I would just do that, and like I would make it like there would be no wars, it would just be stars.
I would do Breakfast Club, Star Wars style.
I mean, just make it in a time period that's like totally separate from all the like Skywalkers, so they never show up.
I don't know what Taika Waititi's movie is, but he was quoted as saying, he's like, I don't think he had a really funny quote. It was like, I don't think I'm doing anybody any favors by making a movie about Chewbacca's grandmother or,
he seems like his head's in the right place.
Yeah. That guy, I think Love and Thunder is going to be really good. Give me something that Taika Waititi's made that was shitty. It doesn't exist.
No.
Did you see Jojo Rabbit?
No.
It's a super good movie and
really
really thoughtfully made, and it's a tightrope walk. It's a risk to do what he did, and I think Ragnarok is amazing, and I think what we do in the dark, what we do in the shadows, is amazing.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, he knows, and he's like a great comedian and a great filmmaker. He's a really unique situation.
Yeah, so everything he said about what he might do with Star Wars sounds right up my alley. So
yeah,
I'm going to be interested, and I think my pod racing show is going to be pretty good.
He can make that.
Yeah, well, because it won't really be about pod racing. The pod racing will be a metaphor for the relationships.
We're moving too fast, literally. Sebulba. Ichaka waka.
All right, we'll end it there. We'll end it at that poodoo.
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 Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.